Hello and welcome back to my scale modeling channel. In this video I am going to show you the step-by-step build progress of the Hasegawa 1/72nd scale Sea Harrier FRS.51 of the Indian Navy. So let's get on with the build. The very first step was to scratch build some control surfaces for the Sidewinder air-to-air missiles to be able to depict them as R550 Magic missiles, which were carried by the Indian Navy Sea Harriers. For the purpose, I used plastic card, which essentially was a SIM card holder sprue, and very carefully cut and shaped the control surfaces of the missiles. I then began working on the pilot and the cockpit assembly, including the ejection seat, as I wanted to depict the Sea Harrier in a flying configuration. After cutting out and cleaning up the nose section, I painted it up in olive drab color. I then followed it up by a general coat of olive drab over the pilot, the seat, and the cockpit instrument panel. The next step was pretty straightforward, and I slapped on some white onto the R550 Magic air-to-air missiles. While the paint on the missiles was drying, I began detailing the seat. The pilot, and the cockpit instrument panel console. Here you can see me detailing the parachute harness of the pilot using fevicol orange. Once all these small parts were painted, it was time to work on the turbofan assembly of the Harrier. The exhaust nozzles were then fit into the main fuselage body by pressing them downwards into the notch, then placing the deflector plates in the position behind the nozzles and locking the deflector plates into position by rotating the nozzles 90 degrees. I was amazed at the engineering put into the kit at this point. After painting the turbofan assembly in silver, it was time to add a dark pastel wash to the detail of the fan blades. I realized the wash wasn't thin enough, so I added more water and then another drop of dishwashing liquid, and it flowed nicely into the crevices of the fan. It was then time to add the decals on the seat and the cockpit instrument panel. The seat decal was a little thick and had to be positioned very carefully on the edge of the seat arm to align with the edge. The instrument panel decal went on nicely. I then fixed the pilot on his seat carefully, ensuring that the hand just rests over the control column, and then attached the seat assembly inside the nose. The two nose section halves were joined together, and this completed the cockpit assembly. It was then time to attach the turbofan behind the cockpit and connect the front section of the nose to the remaining rear section of the aircraft fuselage. It was then time to assemble the wings, each wing being assembled together with an upper and lower section. The assembly of the rest of the aircraft was quite easy, and the aircraft soon took the shape of the Sea Harrier. The horizontal stabilizers were to be fixed such that the notch in the right stabilizer locks into the notch in the left one, and the whole assembly can be positioned as a single unit as per one's preference. Another amazing thought put into the engineering of the kit at this point. Finally, it was time to attach the air intakes. the left and right gun pods, and the inboard and outboard hardpoints. This completed the assembly of the Sea Harrier, and it was time to fill in the gaps with some ComFill automotive filler. Quite a few gaps were visible in the kit. A seam line from the nose extending till the starting point of the horizontal stabilizer, one in the port wing root attachment, 3 gaps in the aft of the cockpit attachment to the fuselage, and another extending from the nose to the gun pod assembly on the underside of the Harrier. Finally, I attached the drop tanks and began working on the outriggers. The instructions do not show the outriggers in the flying mode, and so I had to carefully study some pictures of the Sea Harriers in the flying mode and cut out the outriggers in the same fashion. The refueling probe was then attached to the fuselage, and the aircraft was primed using Bosnia grey primer. I then began pre-shading the aircraft with fevicol black and brought the airbrush really close to the body of the jet so that I could get some fine lines, as I wanted to depict it as a used machine that has served its motherland well and is now close to its retirement days. So I wanted to get as much pre-shading as possible underneath the paint. I then began painting the first coat of the Indian Navy grey, or Tipnis grey as they call it. This color was created by a mix and match of fevicol black, white and sap green colors to achieve the correct tonality of grey. The underside and topside painting were 2 complete days of work amounting to about 9 to 10 man-hours. I ensured to let the pre-shading show through for the worn-out effect to show its magic by carefully manipulating the effect with the amount of paint I sprayed over a particular area. Once all the paint had dried up, I began working on the detailing of the smaller parts like the instrument panel and the outrigger wheels with black and the front of the pitot tube with white. Finally, it was time for the decals, for which I used the Bright Spark deckle sheet. The Navy and Nausena decals were cut out from one sheet and the roundels from the other sheet. The underside decals were applied first. The standard procedure of applying decals was used. I applied watered down PVA glue to the place where the decals would go and then dipped the deckle in warm water for about 30 to 45 seconds and then gently with a soft brush slid the decals onto the position and then cleaned off the excess water with a cotton Q-tip. I then started detailing the canopy edges freehand with the Indian Navy grey. A very steady hand was needed for this detailing, and once the paint dried, I cleaned up the excess overpaint with a toothpick soaked in some acetone. It was then time for another challenging part, painting the pouncing white tiger logo on the nose, as there was no deckle available for this. I practiced painting the logo on paper with a size 0 brush for a full day before I was confident I could freehand it. Nerves of steel were required to patiently paint this, as any error could have ruined almost a month of effort that I had already put into the Sea Harrier. Each logo took 40 minutes to paint in 3 centimeters by 3 centimeters of real estate, and it came out as expected in the end. Finally, it was time to weather the aircraft, and I used the Camlin soft pastels for this purpose. I scraped off a mix of dark blue and brown in a small container and added water to the mix, and then added a few drops of dishwashing liquid to create the wash. This wash was then liberally applied all over the aircraft and then left to dry for about 15 to 20 minutes. Post that, I cleaned up with a paper towel and further refined the weathering using a cotton Q-tip. And here is the completed model of the Sea Harrier FRS.51 of the Indian Navy from Indian Naval Air Squadron 300 White Tigers, and the model depicted here is serial number 614. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed building the model. If you liked my video, click the thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again soon.